May I present you Dr. Suresh Kumar.
So Kerala Center is like a second home to me. It was Kerala Center where about 18 years ago they had recognized me for an award when I was still a small company, just about 50 people. And it was that award, like Dr. Thomas just mentioned, that spurred me on to do more things in life. At that award, I was introduced by Mr. Raja Thomas, who's back there. And he predicted that he introduced me as the next Bill Gates of the Kerala community. I'm sorry I disappointed you, Mr. Raja Thomas. I'm certainly not as wealthy as him, but I'm happier than him because I have all of you in my pocket. Over the years, I have had many good friends in in this community. Dr. Thomas was one of my first mentors when I came in here. And I've been following you, and I've been trying to emulate what you have done in the Indian community. But I also wanted to mention that just about 4 months ago, the Kerala Center did an event for me, a book launch of the book that Dr. Thomas mentioned, my first novel. It was done here by an organization called Sargavedi. And it was the first time that we did a review of a book in English. So I want to thank the Alex who is here, Raju Thomas, Manohar Thomas, and others. And an extremely good turnout. I got some fantastic feedback. So I want to, that's why I feel bonded to this place. The only challenge is getting here is not that easy. But I hope that will get better soon. So I was thinking about what to say. I had many themes in mind which I've been exploring of late. But I thought the best thing would be for me to talk about a concept called the Indian civilizational intelligence. And I'll try to simplify that so that we can all understand. And here is, to do this, I must step back in history a little bit. So if you look at the broad scope of history, and if you look at BC and AD, so BC you had several great civilizations. Egyptians, the Mesopotamians, and followed by Greek. But you also had the Indus Valley civilization. So this goes back about 5,000 years. So Indus Valley and the Chinese civilization are the only two that still is a powerful civilization. At 5,000 years ago, well into AD, these are the two lasting civilizations that is still powerful. So I want to explore that a little bit more with all of you. Now coming down to modern history, about the last 300-400 years, all of you know the events that happened, but most of the 16th and 17th and 18th century, it was either India or China, and sometimes they interchanged as being the leading and the most powerful economy in the world. Now, when I talk about India and China, they were not countries at that time, right? So they were a collection of states that became powerful. Now, after that came the conquest by the European powers, the Dutch, the British, the Portuguese, etc. But I just wanted to take you to one incident. In 1729, there was a Persian emperor by the name of Nadir Shah. So he decided to come to India because he heard of all the stories of the Mughal empires going there, building Taj Mahal, wealth being created, such a beautiful, wealthy country, nation. So he decided to come all the way from Persia. Keep in mind, those days there was no planes, they had to basically walk it up or do it on horseback. Yet they took the journey because of their heard of the wealth and affluence that was there in India. Of course, called Hindustan those days, where the land of the Hindus. So he came and he did what was called very famously as the Delhi sack. He just looted Delhi and he went back to Persia. He did not stay, unlike the Mughals and the British. He did not stay, he went back. And that one incident alone, he got so much wealth that the GDP of Persia went up the following year. They took back so much gold and wealth that was transferred back in there. So the British was there in India at that time. They came in the 1600s, as you know. But they were still not very active. They were only in a few different locations, mostly in some coasts. So when the British saw all this action happening, they thought they would also get involved. So somewhere in the 1750s, after the Battle of Plassey, they took charge. The East India Company became then the crown of the British. It became an official part of the British Empire. And the next 100 years was the years of the maximum loot and plunder of India. As you may actually, I would recommend you read The Era of Darkness by Shishidru, which explains this pretty well. So that 100 years turned India, all the wealth that basically taken out, led by the British. Fast forward, by the time of independence, India became one of the poorest countries on the planet, with a GDP, with a per capita GDP of just below $100. And now at the time, of course, there was the independence movement had gained steam, a lot of energy was there, you know all the incidents that led up to it, but Quit India movement 1942, the Royal Indian Navy Rebellion of 1946, in which my father as a 19-year-old sailor was one of the participants in the Bombay Harbor. But that's when the British realized in 1946 that their time is running out. Because if the uniformed services were against us, were not following their orders, then they were better pack and leave, and that's what they did in 1947. And so when they left in 1947, India was one of the poorest countries on the planet, from the richest to the poorest, and by that time Britain had become the largest economy. Fueled by India and the Industrial Revolution, British became one of the most powerful economies, one of the powerful economies of the world. Immediately after that, though, the interesting thing, after the Indian independence, the British power started to decline because they were no longer getting all the raw materials from India. America became the superpower, especially after World War II. America became the superpower, and then you had a bipolar world for many years, US and Russia, USSR at that time. It was only in 1991 that India started to liberalize and started hitting the road running. And that was under Prime Minister Narasimha Rao. And it's over the last, I would say, approximately 40 years that India has been, but it's only actually in 2014 when Narendra Modi took over as Prime Minister that it really hit its full speed. Right? So that's where India has been all these years. Now I want to make a case though, when I talk about civilization and intelligence, the question really remains, can India come back into number 1 or number 2 position in the world? Is that possible? I'm going to make a bull case for India. Now I'm not predicting that whether it's going to happen or not, but it's a possibility. Now, India has been growing at the rate of roughly 7%, right, recently. And it's about a 4.5 trillion economy. In US is number 1 at 30, China is number 2 at about 20. So India is still far behind. But it's growing at a much faster pace than US and now even China. So you all must have heard of the rule of 72, which means to double any number, if you divide 72 by that number, you will get exactly the number of years it would take for that to double. So if you take India's current growth rate, which is 7%, and 22 years to go to 100 years since independence, right? 1947, it's 100 years, so 22 years more to go for that. So if it grows at 7%, Indian economy will double about 2.5 times. Roughly, that will put it at about 12 trillion. Now, if it grows at a higher rate though, and there is a case you can make for many countries that is in the same growth path of India to hit a 9, 10, 11, 13% rate. Singapore has done it, so has Taiwan. Many other Asian countries has done 11+% growth, so it's possible. Of course, India has the challenge of being a democracy, therefore slower, etc. But if it happens, then India could actually, using the same rule of 72 divided by 9, it can actually grow approximately 4 times, which means it can double 4 times, right? So from 5, it can go to 10, to 20, it can get close to a 30 trillion, I'm sorry, actually the math is 40 trillion. It can reach a 40 trillion, which means that it would be almost on par with where US is today. US is 30, and higher than where China is today. Now, of course, it is unreasonable to assume that America or China is going to be stagnant, right? They will also be growing, but it's possible that these economies will be growing much slower, right? And if you also make an assumption that China grows slower, maybe if it drops down to a 3-4%. Now I'm Indian, so I always make a bull case for India. But if that happens, if India is at 10, 11, and China drops down to 3 or 4, by 2047, India would have overtaken China in terms of size of its economy. Now, overtaking the US is going to take a lot more years. Some say 50 to 80 years. So that I'm not even putting in the table, but it's possible for India to actually become the second largest economy using this math. Now, I want to tie it back into this idea of civilizational intelligence. So why has India and China survived these 5,000 years? I want to give you a couple of examples. All of you must have heard of the Mahakumbh Mela. It happened earlier this year. And you had, anybody know how many people showed up for that? So you had 660 million people. 660 million people showed up. And this is not government. This is people going to do something that is spiritually important for them. Right? There was very minimal disruptions or violence. It happened all on its own. Second example, there was an election last year in India. Guess how many people voted? 640 million people voted over 22 days, 100 crores was the cost. Now, how many people vote in the US?
150 million.
About 150 million, let's assume. Right? So, India, you had 4 times that people voted, and you had a peaceful transfer of power. Nobody said there was rigged elections, there was no storming of the capital. Smoothly things went. right? And that happens because of this idea of civilizational intelligence. It cannot be extinguished, despite hundreds of years of rules of Britain that Britain had. This is something that is ingrained because it is passed down through families. It is not a government mandate. Right? So that is the reason why I am bullish on India. I am bullish on India because it is part of our culture to pass this kind of heritage and knowledge down to our families. So that's the reasoning for mine. Now I just wanted to make a final connection back into how does it connect to us as Indian Americans. Now we have all been very successful, the highest per household income of any community. We have people successful in all levels. But yet we are at a crossroads. Right now the relationship between India and the US is for the first time in about 30 years not on solid grounds. So what is it that we can do about it? Right? I believe we have a role to play. One of that is we need to be more active in the mainstream life. Now, and I say that to include myself too. If you go to an event like a July 4th or a Memorial Day, you will find that not many Indians take part. We take part, of course, in our cultural events. We do that quite well, but we are not active enough when it comes to the mainstream community. In the political field too, I think we can do a lot more. We are active to some extent. I see Kevin is here. But we need more people stepping forth. And we also need to wear our two hats of being of Indian heritage and of our American citizenship. We've got to kind of wear it in a balanced way. So it is good to take a position. Now there are many things India needs to change in their trade policy, etc. And it's okay to point that out. But if you see something that is unfair to India, like what's happening now, when India is being deliberately targeted by the administration, that's for you to also stand up and talk. We are not doing that enough. We have many CEOs, big names, I don't have to tell you, they haven't come forward yet. Right? When Trump calls them, they go to the White House and they're willing to do whatever it takes. Why are we not standing up enough? I think it's an important question we need to ponder about. Not only those big CEOs, I think all of us can do that. Whether it's a small company, in our communities, we can bring up these issues in a fair, balanced way, and I think that will really help us. Those are my thoughts for today. I thank the organizers for this opportunity, and I look forward to meeting with more of you today.